Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's College Essay Pro Chat. I'm Susan Napo. I'm CEO of Wow Writing Workshop. And today our topic is college essay cliches, the things we hear too much, the things we hear too often. I've put a question in the chat if you want to contribute. What is one college essay cliche that you are tired of? Because maybe we can find a way to make it fresh and help you manage those topics with your students. I will do what I always do here today. I will answer the questions you submitted during registration. And if you do not get your question answered, please feel free to email me anytime, susan@wowwritingworkshop.com. You can also go to our website. We have a contact form and we invite you to fill it out and send us more questions. So let's get going. So college essay cliches. There are topics we hear all the time, right? I see a few of them in the chat. This made me who I am today. I got a late ADHD diagnosis in high school, and that is why fill in the blank, right? Sports injuries, service trips, camp counselor, right? These are all cliches we have heard over and over again. But the source and the place where a cliche comes from often is somewhere real and somewhere genuine. Our job as the counselor, as the coach, as the consultant, as the essay specialist, whatever we call ourselves, is to find the source of the cliche and find where that comes from and why the student thinks it's important. Standing on top of the hill, I gained a new perspective. Oh, yes, the I suddenly understood, right? That's also a cliche. That's one of my favorites. I say, really, you suddenly understood. That has almost never happened to me in my whole life, but that's okay. Being on a team taught me teamwork. Absolutely. These are great places to start. Cliches are cliches because they tend to be true. We have to remember that. For a student, let's take Leanne's example, the last one she put in the chat. Being on the tennis team, being on the chess team, being on the swim team, being on the fill in the blank, the volunteer team for my youth group, doesn't matter. It taught me the value of teamwork. So I always want to dig deeper. When a student brings me a cliche, I like to start where the student starts. Remember, it's not just about the ultimate essay that they write, it's about the experience they have while writing the essay. And the more positive we can be while also being honest, the more likely our students are to take what they experience forward with them. Marilyn says they also write them because they don't know how to fill up the word count and haven't thought it out very deeply. This is true, and we can address that as well, right? They start putting in that case, I call them platitudes, right? And this made me the person I am today, and this brought me to the moment where I am now ready to move forward into my life. Those are empty statements, cliche as well. I want to start with cliche topics, and maybe we'll get more into cliche statements where we say, well, that doesn't add anything. As one of our coaches, Joe Kane, loves to say, keep what is essential. If something is in the essay that's not essential, and that goes to the review state later, when we're looking at those platitudes and the empty statements, if it's not essential, if the essay could work without it, then we don't need it. And that's also a way to help students get away from statements that could be applied to anybody. So let's take the late ADHD diagnosis in high school. I like that one because I don't use it all the time as my example. So let's use it today. A student is trying to talk about, I'm going to say, and this is not like an additional information essay. This is not an explanation for I had poor grades for freshman and sophomore year, and then I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I learned that the reason I wasn't concentrating in class is that it was hard for me to focus. Okay. But what if this is a common app personal statement and that a challenge I overcame? Let's do that. I was struggling in school and I overcame that challenge because I found out I had ADHD and I had not been diagnosed. Sounds good as a possibility, right? You're looking at this and saying, I have heard this before too many times. I don't want to hear this again. And no one who's reading this wants to hear this again. But then my question is here. I ask the student, I don't say no. I say, well, what characteristics does that illustrate? And the student says, well, I'm just explaining. And I say, well, you say that you are now doing better in math, let's say, for example, because you're able to concentrate and focus. So, what do I learn about you? I learned that your grades were poor and now they're better. And there's an explanation. You could put that in additional information if it feels important to you, absolutely. But for a common app personal statement, is that a challenge you overcame? Well, yes, it is. So the student says, yeah, it is because I was tired of feeling like I wasn't smart. Like, oh, okay. So tell me more about that. And this is always my question, right? It's not even a question, it's a statement. Tell me more. Tell me more about that. Well, I've always thought I wasn't good at school, and reading was hard for me, and math was hard for me. And one day I said, hey, I am really smart. I'm really curious. There's so many things I understand. I don't want to feel like this anymore. So now I'm curious. Now I'm really interested, right? I'm listening. And I say, all right, so what did you do? Well, I went to my mom and I said, you know what? I think I need to figure out what's going on here because I've tried stickers and sticky notes. And when I was in elementary school and in middle school, I had, rewards for doing my work and it's never really worked. And now I'm 16 and I want to take charge of this and I want to figure it out. Let's figure this out. And so my mom and I went on a research tour. We started reading about different ways that students work. And I started thinking about some of my friends and realizing that some of them have ADHD and they were diagnosed when they were younger and kind of looks like me. Well, so now I have a story about research and curiosity. That's not a story about an ADHD diagnosis. That's a story about problem solving. So the example I'm giving you here, I want you to see that you can start anywhere. The student may think they're still writing a story about a late diagnosis and they're explaining something. But now the theme of the essay, what happened? My mom and I researched ways to help me feel like I could be more successful in school. I initiated the research with my mother on how I could be more successful in school. Why does it matter? Because I'm a problem solver and I don't give up. Oh, well, that could be about anything. So, what I'm saying here is you don't say no, you say how. We say, well, why is that such an important experience? If it's just to explain grades, that's not necessary, unless that's a supplemental question. Is there anything you want to explain to us about your grades and scores and your school record? But that wasn't the question, right? If this is a Common App personal statement and they want to talk about a challenge they've overcome. Now, if they say, my dad took me to the psychologist and I did all the testing and it was really a pain, and now I take this medication and thank goodness I can focus, that's not a story about them. I mean, I'm glad that they can focus and I'm glad that they can pay attention and glad they understand what's going on, but they didn't do that. That's a parent's action, which led to success for the student. Okay, but through the same questioning process, tell me more about that. Tell me how that's a story about you. Tell me what that illustrates about you. I can help the student recognize whether the topic can work. And that takes me back to the beginning because step one of the wow method is to understand the prompt. One of the reasons that students come up with cliches is because they don't really understand the purpose of the essay or they don't fully understand the prompt. They think it's an explanation. They think it's a way they have to show they're unique. They think it's a way to demonstrate how great they are. It's not what it is. It's to show something beyond grades and scores and accomplishments, to go a little bit deeper into who the student is. So let's take the being on a team taught me teamwork. Okay, so here a student comes and says, what happened? I became the captain of the tennis team. Why does it matter? Because I'm a real team player. What happened? I became the captain of the tennis team. Why does it matter? Give me a characteristic. I'm a real team player. That's a characteristic. It's positive. And I say, okay, lots of Every team you play has a captain, right? At least one. Some have co-captains. What does being a captain look like? What do you do? So again, I'm starting where the student starts. I don't say no, I say how. How can I get this to be something that's a little more interesting, a little more effective? Because the general, I'm the captain of the tennis team. Now, this might be the most important accomplishment of the student's life. This is big for them. Okay, so I want to know when you're the captain, what does that mean? Well, I lead practices and I do drills and I take some of my coach and we split the team up and we work on different things separately. I can do like little section practices. I'm really good with serves, and so like I do a lot of that kind of drills. And sometimes I work with the freshman team as like an extra kind of assistant coach. Okay. And then I look again, I look back at in step one, understand the prompt and purpose. We ask three questions. One, why are you writing a comment at personal statement? Okay. Either they answer effectively or they don't. And if they don't, then I correct them. No, this is not to show how you're unique. It's to show something beyond your grades and scores and da 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 da. What are some of your accomplishments that are on the application? What do they already know about you? Because I want to remind them the application is full of accomplishments. So they list, I got this score on the ACT and I took this many AP classes and I go to this high school and da da da, I have a job after school, all of that. Those are accomplishments. Those are things I do. Next question. What else would you like them to know about you? What are some of your best characteristics? Now we get into this is somewhere I can go with this tennis story, right? So maybe this student says, I'm really resilient. I bounce back when hard things happen. And I tend to get along well with people. Okay. So they're telling me, yeah, I'm the tennis captain. Here's what I ask them. What do you do? Because I'm looking for some stories. I'm looking for some examples. And then I say, back in step one, you said that these are some of your best characteristics. You're really resilient. And here's my next brainstorming statement. Tell me about a time. Tell me about a time as tennis team captain that you were really resilient. So I'm taking the characteristics and I'm taking the story they think they want to tell. And I say, was there a time when you were really resilient as the captain? Maybe they have a story, maybe they don't. But let's say they say, well, actually, yeah, I thought that I was going to be captain myself, and now I have a co-captain who I'm going to be, I thought I was going to be able to be the one captain, and this other player also wanted to be captain. And so my coach said, well, you guys can be co-captain. And she used to be my best friend in middle school, and we were not the best of friends anymore, and it's kind of hard. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So, how does that show your resilience? Well, I was really upset at first. And then I really thought about it and figured, you know what? We both have our strengths, and I think I can do this. I think I can put my whole self in this and I can be a good co-captain. I can do this with her. It's going to sometimes it's a little bit hard, but I can do it. And I say, that's really interesting. So, tell me about a time when you really were able to cooperate with her in a way that surprised you. Now we're going a little bit further. I'm curious. I'm very curious. I want stories. I want examples. So what I've done here, I can't promise that this is going to lead us to an effective essay topic, but it's very likely there's a story in there somewhere. Or maybe she says, "No, I can't think of an example when I was really resilient." But I say, "Well, you also say here that you really like people." Oh yeah, that shows up as a team captain all the time because even the people that like might not be my favorites and maybe I don't have classes with them and maybe, we wouldn't be friends otherwise, I'm just curious about them and I can make them feel comfortable. So then I go again, tell me about a time when you made someone feel comfortable, even though they might not have been your, best, most favorite person. And they can tell me a story. She can tell me a story. So here what I'm doing is I'm taking the cliche and I'm finding out where is there something substantive. This is why we strongly recommend that you not just talk to students about topics and say, write me an essay, write me a draft, and we'll look at it. Because unless you have a topic that also has at least one positive characteristic attached to it, it's very hard to revise your way out of a poorly conceived idea. So if the student writes the whole essay, being on a team taught me how to be a team player, and I love being the captain, and being the captain is great, and let me describe a day when we had a beautiful turnout at, we were at a match and the sun was shining and we won and everything was glorious. Now what do I do? Now I have to tell the student this beautiful essay you wrote, it isn't effective. It doesn't work because you started with a cliche and there was nothing behind it. So we really need to make sure that students understand the prompt, they brainstorm ideas, they focus on theme, and then they get into writing. Because if we go straight from just a wide open discussion of ideas to a draft, or bring me a draft and we'll talk about it, that's really hard to work with. So let's see. Let me take another question from our registrations. Michelle says, can't seem to get away from the sports injury. I did have one last year that was fantastic, and I know it's helped him get into some reach schools. It's hard to find where the line is. Yeah, the sports injury. There's another favorite cliche, right? And if you have another one that you want me to discuss, put it in the chat. I'll be happy to address it. The sports injury. I tore my rotator cuff and was not able to play baseball this season, and baseball is my life. Okay, that's the injury. But the student wants to write about how I came back after my injury and I got 7 home runs in the last 3 games and the team cheered me on and I recovered and now I'm the best again. Because in step one, I taught the student the difference between accomplishments and characteristics, my first question with the sports injury story is, so, if you hadn't gotten all those home runs, would it still be a good story? Get some thinking, right? Student number one says, well, not really. And I say, okay, let's move on because that's an accomplishment and accomplishments are important. I'm not denying it, but they know that you play baseball. It's in your activities. It's something you do all the time. Your baseball coach is writing a letter of recommendation. They know you play and they know you're good. If your purpose is to show them what a star you are, then it doesn't belong in your essays, and that's okay. No problem. Remember, we talked about what makes an effective college essay topic, what's the purpose of the essay. But if the student says, well, actually, yeah, even if I'd gotten nothing, even if I'd struck out every game after I came back, it's still a good story. So now, again, I'm curious. And I say, so what made it a good story? And the student says, well, baseball has been my life since I was 8. I'm good at it. I've always been good at it. And then I had an injury and my shoulder didn't work. And I couldn't pitch and I couldn't hit and I couldn't catch. I couldn't do anything. I was useless for baseball. And that was sophomore year. And that was when I was really, really getting good. I'd been working out, I'd been working with a coach over the summer, and then I was injured. And it felt like a disaster. And I'm just curious. I want to listen, right? I want to hear the story. And I say, well, why is it still a good story even though you were injured? And the student says, well, because while I was out, I had to kind of redefine who I am because I couldn't play baseball. I can play again and I'm really good again, but I feel like I'm kind of a deeper, broader person. And I'm listening. And I say, so tell me more about that. Well, while I was out, I still went to practices and I still went to a lot of the games, but I didn't go to everything all the time. And so some of that time, I actually ended up spending time with my grandmother. And she lives nearby, and I have always spent time with her, but I've never spent that much time with her. But a caregiver wasn't available some of the time, and I was available more. So I just started spending more time with her. And I found that I really like to cook for her. That was one of the ways we connected. And now the student's just telling me stories. I'm just listening. And I find out that he discovers that his grandma's favorite meal is a certain kind of chicken dish that she used to make for them when he was when he was younger. And I'm hearing a story about someone who's really paying attention to someone in his life in a way that he didn't before. So do you see where I'm going with this? It can go anywhere. If you're curious and willing to be surprised, and you remind the student that college essays are generally about characteristics, not accomplishments. You can you can help them take a topic they have and move beyond the cliche. Move into something that really is meaningful because often the cliche is there because it's attached to something that is meaningful to the student. We have to remember they have never done this before. We've done this so many times, too many times to count, right? But the student has never done this before, and we want them to feel competent. And we don't want them to over rely on us. So everything we do is geared toward getting this essay done and also getting them to work independently and to work efficiently and to work confidently. So let's talk about cliches for other types of essays. How about the recently added to many applications? Tell us about a time when you disagreed with someone, or tell us about a time when you had a conversation with someone who thought differently than you. Sort of the are you open-minded enough to be on our college campus question, right? And in fact, some of the schools have added this can be a real or imagined conversation because students would say, well, that's never happened to me. So in that case, a student will assume that the cliche is the only acceptable topic, right? I have to have had a big political discussion with someone or have to have disagreed on something really significant. In that case, again, we go back to understanding the prompt and purpose. What is the purpose? And I want them to understand this. What is the purpose of this kind of a prompt? They're curious. They want to know how you think. They want to know, can you handle discomfort? Discomfort could be with anything. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be about some huge social issue. For some students, this is an opportunity to talk about big social issues. And they welcome it and they thrive on that. But for some students, they don't. And that's okay. So in that case, we're taking the cliche and that's in their head that it has to be something big and significant. And oh my God, this has never happened to me. And I'm just a regular person and I'm with a lot of people who are like me. That's fine. So then I say anything. Give me any time when you've had a discussion with someone that was challenging, or a time when you disagreed, or you saw things differently. How about with your parents? See, that's an easy one, guys. There's always something, right? They're teenagers. There's always some conflict with their parents. Curfew. My dad says I have to be in by 11, and it's ridiculous. But I convinced him that midnight was okay. Oh, well, tell me about that. And now I hear a story about, well, first I just whined about it and I got really angry. That didn't go anywhere. So then I polled my friends and I found out that they were able to stay out midnight or later. I showed him what a great driver I am and how responsible I am. And and they'd start listing all the things and I say, hey, so then you had a conversation with your dad and it went okay. And did you get what you wanted? Well, no, he still said 11. Or yes, he allowed me to stay out later. It doesn't matter what the result is. The important thing is the conversation. Have you had a conversation with someone? Or perhaps they had a terrible experience. I yelled at my dad. He yelled back at me. It was a disaster. I'm never doing that again. Ever since then, I've really thought a lot about how I present myself because if I start out angry, it doesn't go anywhere. And last Tuesday, I disagreed with my friend about something simple. I don't know, it could be anything. And I thought, I want to do this better. I want to be more respectful of other people's views. It doesn't have to be big. It can be anything. So another cliche topic. Let's see. I like this one. Standing on top of the hill, I gained a new perspective on life. So we talked a little bit about this, but Again, a cliche, remember, you're 17 years old. Life feels big. The world feels big. Any insight you've had feels big. So we have to be respectful. I don't want to say, keep going, kid. You're going to get way more perspective as you get older. No, I want to say, let's go smaller. In that case, I say, bring me down to earth, bring me down to the ground. How did you get there? How did you reach this conclusion? Often, this is a student who feels like they need to make some giant conclusion about an experience they've had. And what I want to say to them over and over and over and over again is small is good. Small is relatable. Small is important. So let's say a student says, I was out on a hike and I realized the beauty of nature. And now this is essay number one, right? Topic number one, background, something about me. I'm a hiker. I love to be outside. And as I was, going over the mountain into the valley, I realized how bountiful my life is and I gained a new perspective. How about if we stay on that hike? What do you like about hiking? Why are you there? I'm bringing the student down to a more reasonable level. And perhaps they say, well, I just like noticing things. I'm really observant. And when I'm out hiking, I have the opportunity to pay a lot of attention to details. It's something I like, it's something I'm good at, it's something that brings me peace and makes me able to go on in the world. And so I'll say, well, tell me about a time when you were on a hike and you noticed something small. Oh, there's these little tiny purple flowers that come out only in April. And I don't usually get out on this one trail, but I did last year and I got to see them and I took some pictures and I sent them to my friends. And it just made me feel good. And it made me feel like, the world is okay and I'm going to be okay. And I say, that's really lovely. So what happened? I noticed these little purple flowers on my hike. Why does it matter? Because I'm very observant and I appreciate small details. That could be a background story. That could be a story. And maybe that's not the whole essay. Maybe that's just part of the essay and there's context. I live a really busy life and there's so many things going on all the time and I can't always pay attention to the details and there's so many people coming and going and so much going on. But when I'm alone and I'm hiking and I can pay attention or when I can bring someone with me, then I'm really focused. So you see, you can take any cliche. And that comes from, I notice in the bounty of nature how beautiful everything is, and I have such a perspective on my life. You can bring a student to earth by asking questions, by being curious, by being willing to be surprised. So let the cliche be the starting point, not the ending point, and you'll have a lot more success. Thank you so much for your time today. This recording will be up for a month. After that, I welcome your questions and we'll see you again next time.